is. Oh yeah. Okay.
Danny, we're at it again, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm on a great day.
Well, I can tell by the smile that you're really looking forward to chatting with our special guest tonight, Kevin. I only know him as
Absolutely.
Captain Kevin. You know him as so much more. So I'm looking forward to learn a little bit more about Kevin tonight, as I'm sure our audience is. But what have you been up to?
I've been busy. We know about the North Toronto Walleye Open, so that's been keeping me busy getting this started off the ground, and everything's going very well. I'm very happy with the response we're getting, and we're moving forward with that. Obviously, work life, a little bit of rentals going on, and of course we got some kind of winter knocking on our door. I'm not sure if it's going to be a bad one or a good one, but either way, we know it's getting close.
What's it like up there right now? Because I know we've had a cold front go through. The wind certainly picked up, but what's it like up there right now?
So yesterday we hit 21 degrees. Today we were at 11. We finally the leaves in the last 2 days finally gave up and they've hit the ground. So it looks like it should this time of year, and the weather's kind of keeping up there, but uh, it's still looking pretty warm, I guess.
Attaboy. Well,
I'm
tonight
enjoying it.
we are going to introduce Captain Kevin, and we have lots to talk about. Tony, how you doing, my friend, and everybody else who's watching? This is the Power Hour. It's a CFN Live feature presentation sponsored by a video. Well, actually, sponsored by POW Castings. So there you go with the Power Hour. But what we'd like to do is feature, as we did on Monday's live, a little bit about our sponsor, because we've done virtually nothing to sort of pump their tires and thank them for what they're doing to support us.
And
So
he earned it.
he did. He's
He's
and
earned it.
continues to do so. In fact, right now, I'm sure Brad is putting eyes on jigs, and I mean thousands. So he's busy probably watching this. But in the meantime, what I'd like to do, Dan, is introduce you to our sponsor, and I'm going to do so in the means of a video. And it's a newer product. It's a new product actually for POW Castings. It has a lot of similarities to some plastics out there, and I know NXS is one of your sponsors.
Mhm.
But I had the pleasure of using this prototype for a good part of the summer, and I was actually blown away at how well it did with catching fish. And of course, Dan, as you know, as busy as I was, I didn't get a lot of chances to get out there. But three of which that I want to highlight tonight, um, it worked really, really well. So let us just walk through the video, and I'll try and point out what I can. Dan, of course, as I said, it is POW Castings. That's the plastic there. So it's kind of a unique shape in the fins. Dan, and the video doesn't do it justice, but how they flutter is truly something. So of course, the first chance I had was up at Horwood, and because you're up in that neck of the woods, Horwood's finest was on full display, and of course, that was the first walleye I caught. But yeah, again, walleye, smallmouth, but especially pike, comes in a variety of sizes. But it is called the Detroit River Dinner Bell. Some might
Fantastic.
say, well, Scottie, if you've only used it at Horwood and Camp McIntosh and fishing with Jim, you haven't even tried it on the Detroit River, and people would be right. So we are challenged now because we're going to be forced to get down to the Detroit River and actually test it in the Detroit River waters. But if it goes like it did in some of the slack water, now there's a little bit of movement up at McIntosh because it's the French River, but I can't wait to see some of these plastics work on the Detroit River. It's unique in the sense that the plastics fit in with the jig head itself, so they're cut out and they match up perfectly actually with the jig heads. But as I said, one fish, if you are someone that loves pike, I highly recommend these. Because I will say I caught way more pike on these plastics than I did any other species of fish. They just couldn't leave this darn thing alone. And as you saw with the loons, it called everybody in teeth. So it's called the Detroit River Dinner Bell, and we're going to find out shortly how good it is on the Detroit River. But if it's anything like it has been for me this season, 2 thumbs up.
I know for myself, April's just around the corner. We're looking forward to getting down there in early spring, so we'll have to give them a try on that. In that and it's obviously something that looks like it works well in that high speed current. So that's what's going to be useful.
And that's what it's all for. That's exactly what it's for. Chantal, nice to see you as well. Thanks for all who are joining us, and continue to support what it is that we're doing. Dan, tell us a little bit about our special guest tonight, because I know you know more. I'm probably going to sit back and let you sort of conduct things tonight, because, as I said, Captain Kevin is you're familiar, far more familiar. I'm familiar with Matt. You said cousin, right?
I believe they're cousins. Yes.
The cousin. Okay, so we'll figure that out. But I know a little bit more about Matt than I do Kevin. So, like everybody else, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to learn. So, take it away, Bob.
Kevin's a Sioux boy, so I got to know him through all the Sioux guys, and that they're actually Nick Huxon is the one who introduced me to Kevin, and we hit it off immediately. Of course, we're all anglers, and Kevin, he's a tournament angler. He fished the NWT, and he did that for a number of years. He's a full-time resident now of Southwest Florida, down on Marco Island. He's got a beautiful place, and he runs a charter business called Six Shooters out there. And he's got a beautiful fleet of boats. He's got four beautiful boats. I'm not sure that style of boat, that offshore boat kind of he's got, but he's also got a new cruiser style, a baby shark he's got. We haven't got to try that out. So luckily for the last 2 summers, I've been able to go down and spend a few days with Kevin out there fishing, and I'm overwhelmed at the fish we've caught with him, and just how he, I love Kevin. Kevin's a fun guy to be around. If you love Nick Huxon, you're gonna love Kevin. We're all the same kind of guys, and to get along, and I'm lucky enough. I actually have a live audience member with me here. I've got we'll give you a little pan over here to give you a little stroll. I got Larry Badaviaya here with
Hi guys,
who popped in, and so we actually. I actually spent about a good half an hour talking about who our guest was tonight, and showing them pictures of all the fish we've been catching, and some of the techniques we use. And Nick brought down some secret baits this summer, and me and Nick had a lot of fun with. And we'll let Kevin fill us in on that.
Well, on that note, without further ado, let's bring in Captain Kevin. Captain Kevin, how are you doing this evening, dude?
Thanks, guys.
For us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Everything's good. You guys doing good?
Absolutely, my friend. Good. When we're talking fishing, it's always a good time.
Yeah, of course.
Kevin, I'm interested to learn. First of all, how long have you been down in Florida now since you've left the Sioux?
I've been in Florida permanently for a little over 2 years.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was in and out for about a year, learning, trying to take in as much knowledge as I could for about a year, and then my wife, 3 kids, and the dog and we all came down a little over 2 years ago, full time.
Now, I got to ask the question, because it's not an easy industry to get in, and I'm not sure if you did it back up here this side of the border, but chartering is quite an endeavor, especially for waters that you're not familiar with. Tell us how that was starting out as a charter captain down in Florida.
You're right. It is tough, and it's a tough market to breach, especially as someone from another country. But for me, all the stars kind of aligned. It was kind of a fluke situation. I had sold a business in Canada, for which I had stepped back from fishing to pursue that business. So there was a number of years where I had stepped back from fishing to grow a business there. It wasn't for sale. I sold it. Was approached and sold it, and I found myself searching for that thing I had been missing in my life for the last 5 or 6 years, and it was fishing. And we vacationed here. We had a vacation home, much like people in the Sioux who have cottages in Gully River and Haviland. We had a cottage here, and we would come here for a week or two and fish. And one day, I had an email of a charter business, a 30-something-year-old charter business, where the owner was looking to retire, and he was looking to sell, and he needed a fresh, he was looking for someone to come in and kind of under his wing and take it over. And I thought that we fit that shoe pretty well. And I looked at my wife one night at dinner, and I said, do you want to do this? And she's like, yeah, let's do it. So we've been here pretty much ever since we had that conversation.
Well, God bless you and God bless her for making those decisions and supporting you in a way that allowed you to buy a boat and get set up and geared up for taking out hooligans like Danny.
Oh boy, Danny, come on.
I'm the calm one. We all know that.
Oh, he is.
We forget Nick's in this boat with us. So.
Oh yeah, I know.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, I will get to obviously what we're here to talk about, which is a number of things when it comes to tournaments, and of course you were a member of the NWT for a number of years. But before we do that, of course, tell us a little bit about what your charter company offers, and for those who are visiting Florida, what they can expect if they book you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a fleet of 5 boats, everything from 25-foot single engine center consoles up to our that one picture there. That's our 31 Bertram. That's our the Baby Shark. That's our offshore boat. And we have a 30-foot Parker that Danny's been on with twin 300s. That's an offshore boat. So we really cater to all anglers. We fish backwater fishing for people who have never fished before. Just learning how to fish, learning how to cast, learning how to, put the shrimp on their hook, all the way up to guys like when Danny and Nick come down and they want an arm bar tug, they want to go out and they want to come back like feeling they just did leg day at the gym, So we kind of cater to.
This body doesn't lie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's right. I've seen it. I've seen Danny. Yeah. So we kind of cater to all aspects of anglers. And I like to say that half of our trips are people who just never fished in the saltwater before. And that's what they want to try it out. And then we have a number of hardcore guys who want to do 8, 10, 12-hour trips and put meat in the fridge, as well. So I have a great crew of captains. When we acquired the company, a few of those captains stayed on. We've got a handful of local guys who I'm thankful for, because that's how I was, essentially trained. And I've kind of focused my specialty on the offshore fishing. That's the most familiar for what I'm comfortable with, in the freshwater. And there's tons of different species. There's, it's big water fishing. It's a lot of fun. It could be, it's just like fishing back home. Danny will tell you, like we have days where we struggle because we're in 6 to 8 foot waves and the fishing's tough, but we have days where we can go out and absolutely slam them. So it's just like anywhere. But that's kind of our market. And we try to tackle all angles, all different groups of people who want to fish.
Now, I do believe, Dan, before we went live, we were talking a little bit about bringing some of the north tackle down to the south. And I do believe that we were using presentations like a jigging wrap that we typically would use for walleye. Have you had much success with some of the walleye presentations down there in the south?
I tell you what, years ago in the walleye tour, a guy told me that walleye anglers make some of the better anglers. Whether that's true or not, Danny can testify to that. But and coming down here and fishing here, it's kind of proven to me that it's true. In the walleye world, we're trained to fish the same species of fish in hundreds of different conditions. You're fishing, like you mentioned earlier, Detroit River. You're fishing bottom fish with jigs, where you can go 5 miles south into Lake Erie, and now you're pulling crankbaits for suspended fish. You can go to Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and you're fishing 2 feet of water in the weeds, and so on and so on. And it's all fishing for the same species of fish. Where in the saltwater, a lot of those tactics that I've learned through those years, I brought with me down here. And I completely got the stink eye from a lot of the locals. Like, what are those? Well, they're planer boards. What are you doing with those? Why are you pulling planer boards in the Gulf of Mexico? But it works. I'm telling you, so a lot. And then, I've been slowly, obviously I had to learn what the locals do first. And because that's tried and true, proven, and it works. So I learned that. And then over the course of the last couple of years, I've been able to experiment with other techniques. And then when these guys came down, I'm setting them up with live bait, live shrimp. I'm throwing the cast net. We're getting live bait. And then Nick and Danny are just pitching jig and wraps over the side. And these guys are out fishing me, and I'm using live bait. And this is like, for me, it's my home now, So I just think that being able to be versatile and knowing the conditions you're in and the way the water's moving and what you're fishing over, as an angler, you can really put together a program that works. And Danny and Nick, just by them coming down with a little Plano box with walleye gear, proved it. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah,
I can't take any credit for that. That was 100% Nick's idea.
Of course it was. Yeah.
And as soon as we got in the airplane, he says, "Yeah, I got a Plano box." I'm like, "That was a great idea. I'm glad you think it was the best thing I've thought of." Like, as soon as he told me, I'm like, "Yes, we got to do that." Because I remember our trip prior to that, Kevin talking about the planer boards and everything else. And when you realize that as soon as you catch a fish, something else bigger tries to eat it, and when you see a 10-foot shark jump out in the water like a bass does up here, you realize, oh my God, I'm not ready for any of this. It's quite the experience.
Yeah.
On that note, Kevin, I'm intrigued because I do follow quite a few captains and quite a few pages down the Florida area. As I said, one of my favorite places outside of Ontario and Canada to fish is, of course, Florida. I love Florida to fish. But there seems to be, and I'm going to get you to either substantiate that or maybe just denounce it. Is there a shark problem? Is it tough as a charter captain, or is it as tough as it seems to be played in the media in regards to getting your catch up to the boat without it being feasted by the taxman?
I think it's very season dependent. It's very water temperature dependent. And it's because Florida, our weather pattern is either hot or very hot. So the bait comes and goes on those temperatures, and much like freshwater, when the bait comes in, the fish come in, and with the fish within the Gulf of Mexico come the predators. So there's always a window of fishing where there is no predators there. The bait just shows up and the fish follow them in. The snapper, the grouper, the eating fish, the cobia, the permit, they follow the bait in, and they're feeding on the bait. And then slowly behind them come the predators. Usually it's not immediately. They don't travel in packs. But you could fish a reef or a shipwreck today, and there could be nothing on it. And you could fish it tomorrow, and there'll be snapper on it. And you can fish it the next day, and it's loaded with barracudas. And so to say that I don't think there's a predator problem here. I just think it's the natural ecosystem. And I mean, fish eat fish, big fish eat small fish, and that's just how it works. So I think just as much as a walleye would follow a bait around in Detroit River because they have to feed, a shark is going to follow around a school of snapper because they have to feed too. Yeah. That's my thoughts on it.
Great answer. Fantastic answer. So there's a million reasons why we brought you here. And of course, I don't know if you can tell us any secrets when you were out on the boat with these two that you can share. Because that our PG rating, but nonetheless, it's got to be fun. Do you have a lot of fun when Canadians come down and book your charter, or do they have a soft spot in your heart?
I do. I really do. I try to take all the Canadians because we have 5 captains. My goal with the business is that my captains are busy, of course, right? I mean, your employees are what makes the world go around. But for me, I have a soft spot for Canadians because I still have an Ontario license plate on my truck, and my truck's wrapped with 6-shooter. When they pull in and they look at my truck, they're like, I don't know, something's going on here, So I have a soft spot, and I love seeing them. I know when we get a Canadian that we're going to talk about walleye fishing. We're going to talk about bass fishing or crappie or any, northern pike or muskie or any of those species. So I can really relate to those people. And I try to have a lot of fun with them on the boat, trying to relate certain species in the saltwater to what we catch back home. I think we caught Nick, Danny, we took him to Pelican Pier. We caught him a big snook, right?
Yeah.
And we call those our saltwater walleye. They kind of look like a walleye, but they don't have any teeth or anything. But so I'm able to play some games with them and relate them to home. But on the same page, I'm also able to take them out into the Gulf and give them an arm workout that they can't get at home, and send them home. And most of the time, I mean, I got videos of Danny and Nick passed out in the back of the boat, sleeping on the way in.
That was a big grouper.
Because we're just able to we have some fish here that'll just whoop you. So
yeah,
I try to make sure that I'm available for anybody from Canada, my home, so I can show them what we have to offer here.
That's awesome. Right on. Well, we got Nick in the audience. Nick, nice to see you. Of course,
Nicky.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. This would be. I think we'd have to go past the hour if Nick was here tonight. This might take a little bit more than an hour if Nicky was here. So maybe we're blessed that he isn't. As much as we love you, Nick, but nonetheless, Danny, obviously, you have been with the NOWT for a number of years. Kevin, you obviously competed on your subsequent trails as well, whether it was the NWT, PWT, or what have you. Give us a little bit of background on your prowess as a tournament angler.
Yeah, so I started on the last year of the FLW Walleye Series. I fished the last 2 events they ever did before switching to, I believe it was the NWT. In the gap there, they had the AIM Series, the AIM Pro Series. Then they went to a weekend series. And I also fished the NOWT. I did a season with Nick as a partner. I think I fished a few different partners over the years. Nick and I obviously had the most fun. I don't know that we ever won any money, but we definitely had the most fun. So I mean, I did that. I played that game, and it was a great game. We had a lot of fun. When I got into the meat and potatoes of having children and having to make a living, I had to pursue my business at the time. And through those years of pursuing what I was doing, I really missed the void of the satisfaction of fishing, and then I was watching Nick and guys like Danny and everybody, kind of living the tournament dream. And so that's what pursued me to where we are today. But, I fished with a lot of people. I co-anglered for a few years. I fished with, guys like Mark Martin and a bunch of people over the years. And I was able to, Danny can agree. You're able to take, every event is different. So if you can learn one thing from every event that benefits you more somewhere else, it just makes you that much better of an angler. So been fortunate for all those years fishing. That's what kind of makes you as the angler you are today, right? So
go ahead, Dan.
Well, I kind of wish I was in Florida right now. I'm freezing my ass off.
It's cold here too, man. Look, I got a hoodie on. It's cold.
Yeah, but I got a hoodie on. But you're probably at plus 20. I'm at 1 degree here, but
yeah.
But I mean, when first time when Nick kind of said, "Hey, when we go to Florida, we're gonna go visit my buddy Kevin. We're gonna go." That's kind of my first interaction with Kevin. And I remember getting on the boat with him. We got a case of beer and a fishing rod, and he's like, "Whatever you want to do, you've never got to do, that's what we're doing." He's like, "Okay," and we went, and I think we went 30 miles offshore that first time, and you're blown away because it was like glass calm. I remember he sets us up, he's anchoring. You're trying to learn, like he says, every experience is something. So for them, it's understanding how to properly find the wreck, identify your current, your wind movements, and anchor you up for both of them, because you realize really quickly the current goes one way and the wind does another thing. And you're trying to adapt for that to maximize your exposure. And by the time you're doing all that, you look behind the boat and there's like 35 barracuda behind you, and they're all sitting there, and then they're all like 3 to 5 feet long. And you look at Kevin like, where do they come from? He's like, we're the only shade for 30 miles. They have nowhere else. They're looking for us. And I was like, well, that's wild. Yeah. And then it's just a free for all after that. And it was just such a unique experience to go through like that. And, it's the first time in my life was this year, which was the funniest time. We came off, and of course, like, we're all buddies. We're having a good time. and we're not breaking any laws, but we've been drinking all day. We're having a good time. We get to the dock, we see game warden. Well, me and Nick are like, oh shit, here's the game warden. Kevin's like, yeah, we're okay. They didn't care. They just wanted, oh, you got your license, guys? Yeah, we got a license. Oh, well, right on. And we spent the whole time shooting the shit with them. So it was kind of a really different experience for us to kind of like that. And it was you start feeling more relaxed, start having a good time. You start realizing it's such a different environment and stuff like that. And it was just one of our funny stories to add to all that, eh?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kevin, when it comes to your time in the tournaments, and obviously you left because tournaments right now are faced with a variety of issues, variety of problems. Folks are finding it very difficult to make ends meet. Prices have gone through the roof since COVID.
Of course.
We are starting to see a decline, especially when it comes to the boat-based tournaments. In your years as a tournament angler, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
That's a great question. You're right by saying there's more challenges today. I had challenges in my time as well. I mean, I think for one, the cost of actually doing the event. I mean, you got to own the boat. You got to own the electronics, which electronics 10 years ago can't even compete with the electronics today. I had like 2 Lowrance HDS 8s on my Ranger back then, and now guys are running like 6 of them with live scope and everything. So I think a big hurdle back then was cost of doing it. You basically had to have sponsors, and another hurdle was, a lot of the guys in the field at the time were seasoned vets, and they were the best of their class, and they were hard to beat. And I was pre forward facing sonar. I was pre all these electronics, and to compete in a trolling tournament against guys like, RIP Chief Papanaw and all those guys from the PWT days, it was tough. But as a young guy, you could take all that knowledge you learned from every event and move forward. I think today, I agree with you. Times are tough. Some people are having a hard time. Boats have skyrocketed. Engine sponsors they're not sponsoring people like they used to, and so I think it can be tough for like a new guy, kind of getting into it, but if you love fishing, I mean, what's a price tag, right?
So this is I think the approach that Dan and I and Nick especially have taken with the NOWT, and of course with any tournament or derby, if you will, to try and make it community based, try and bring and maintain the fun within the tournament.
Yeah.
What we see with some of the bass tournaments, and this isn't a slight or anything, directed towards them in a derogatory way, but you don't see a sense of community like you do with some of the northern events.
Yeah.
You have many bass tournaments, walleye tournaments that go on in the north, but in the south, you see sort of a trend towards throwing your fish in the basket, getting the wade, put the boat on the trailer, and then you're gone. What I truly love about the north is they build community within the tournament. That almost becomes just as important as handing the champions the check and trophy.
Yeah.
Is that the approach, in your opinion, that should be fostered and thought of more? Because at the end of the day, I think all tournament directors are scrambling to figure out how do we get people to participate? How do we get more boats? And we're at crossroads right now.
Yeah, so that's a great topic. The most beautiful thing about, I can only speak for the NOWT, but the most wonderful thing about that trail is that you are family on that trail. And I was only on it for a number of years, but every weigh-in, your family. When you do your check-in in the morning, your family. When you go to the dinner the night of, your family. That the community, instead of scolding, I've been to large events in the States where they don't want tournaments to come because they think they're bad for the fishery or whatever. But the communities in Northern Ontario, they overlook that, and they know you're going to bring in all these boats. They're going to buy gas in your hometown. They're going to buy bait in your hometown. They're going to spend nights in hotels. It's an economy booster. It's a short period of time. It might only be a week, but it's an economy booster, and it showcases what your area has to offer, especially in the fishing outdoor space. So I agree with you. I think that level of tournament, keeping it like within the family, I guess is how I would explain it. Everybody shakes hands at the rules meeting. There's no animosity. No one's got a chip on their shoulder. That's the way to go. That's the way to move forward. We want new anglers. We want young guys being, hey, I want to do that. Monogamy tournament next year. We want new guys, and that's the way to do it. Is they have to feel welcome and invited to be there. So the Northern Ontario Walleye Trail I think, has got that figured out. And if they keep going down that path, that's the future.
That's, Kevin hit the nail on the head when he says it like that. And that's kind of one of the things, like Scottie and I, we've discussed that with the tournament, is you're really trying to focus in is not so much the anglers, but the people coming to watch it. You want to bring people to come and be participating with it, and you may make sure that they're just as involved. And we've got those experiences when we went to Duberville or Matagami and Long Lac, but you feel like that. That being said, tournament guys, we don't lose that edge to want to fish in tournaments. So what do you got going on down south there? You got anything down in that Florida that's drawing your attention or caught your eye?
Like for tournaments?
Yeah.
So my goal right now is to obviously run charters, and that's how I kind of make my living right now. But I'm a tournament guy at heart, right? So just like you got, so there's a couple different things going on down here. There's Kingfish. There's a Kingfish series. One of the world's largest tournament trails is the Marlin series, and they go all the way from East Coast New York all the way up down to Costa Rica, all the way over to Cabo. That's a big deal, and they have events anywhere in between. That's something that I think I'd like to grow into. You got guys like Michael Jordan's got a boat in it, and so there's a lot of different people on that billfish type of tournament series. That's what we have down here. That's what kind of attracts the anglers and the audience. We have the odd inshore bass, the largemouth bass like Okeechobee, of course. Bass tournaments on Okeechobee all the time. We got peacock bass fishing, a lot of freshwater stuff. But for us, what draws me in down here is the pelagics and the billfish. And I think progressively over time, that's something we're going to try to work towards.
We have a bit of a phenomenon going up here, and it's all across North America. I don't know what it's like in Florida, so I'm going to ask you that. But the one tournament trail that does not seem to be suffering right now is, of course, our kayak friends and foes. The kayak industry and the kayak community is just exploding. Are you seeing the same from a saltwater perspective, or is it more freshwater down there?
No, the kayak world is booming, especially, all forms of kayak. There's the paddle kind, then there's the pedal kind. That's a big deal down here. And you know what, to touch on that, another thing that's booming down here right now is sea-doo fishing. These guys are retrofitting, like what I would like. So for me, being from Ontario, when I ice fished, we all had big Scandics or, ice fishing snowmobiles. Guys are kind of doing the same thing with sea-doos. They're putting Garmin or Lowrance units on them. They got bait tanks, and they're running 40, 50 miles offshore in these sea-doos, and they're pounding fish. And there's a tournament circuit now for these guys, and they're doing really well. So between that and the kayak world, I think it's a more affordable way for a lot of these guys to get in the action of the tournament world, and they can still get out to where they got to go to catch fish.
That's really interesting. Wow. Well, could you see yourself on a sea-doo, Dan?
I'm going to say no. I'm the kind of guy to go do donuts in one every once in a blue moon. I've done that, have a good time, but I don't know about fishing on that. I'm pretty comfortable when my boat's got a 100-inch beam in it. That's what I like, especially at the Gulf. Like I've seen some big stuff out there. I don't know if I want to be in an 8-foot Sea-Doo, to be honest with you.
No, makes sense.
Especially the storms that we ran around, like I was unbelievable. Like that's the stuff we didn't even touch, but like Kevin has to pay attention to. We did what about 100-mile detour to go around a big massive storm front. We went between two storms. We were closer to Key West than we were to Marco Island at one point, and it's kind of featureless. But he's explaining to you, you're driving, and you can actually visually see these big massive walls of water, and we're cutting right between them. And it's like, whoa, like that's not something I'm used to doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Incredible.
Kevin's like cool as a cucumber. It's like, no, this is like every day. Don't worry about it.
That's the big thing here is we got weather, radar, weather radar, and good eyesight. You got to be able to dodge that stuff. So,
Kevin, do you have forward-facing sonar on any of your vessels?
I do. I have it on my 30-foot center console. I never used it in the freshwater. That's before my tournament time. I do have it, and I tell you what, I learned most of the fishing trying to put it in words, most of the knowledge I've got for what's on the bottom, I've learned from the forward facing sonar. I'm the only guy down here in my neck of the woods who uses it. And I was kind of ridiculed, and everyone's like, what's that? And that's cheating and this and that. And I said, well, hey, it's got a price tag. I can buy it. Anyone can buy it. And, I substantially expedited my learning curve by having it.
That's interesting. I've actually never heard anybody really say that, other than the fact that it just verifies what they already knew. LiveScope basically allowed them to gain confidence that, you know what, I've been hitting this point, I've been hitting this mid-lake shoal. I knew there was fish here, but didn't have the confidence until I actually saw it on the screen. So in my opinion, LiveScope has always been there to make good anglers even better. The argument, unfortunately, is, these electronics, for those who are unethical and don't necessarily want to follow rules, they're more about filling their freezers, that it's going to give them that opportunity to do even more harm to the fishery. I'll tell you. Go ahead, Kev.
No, sorry to cut you off, Scottie. So I'll tell you what, forward-facing sonar is, for me, I watch a lot of the NWT and the NOWT and guys crushing fish with it in the freshwater. I think its usability is different in the saltwater, for me anyways. So in the freshwater, guys are using it to target fish, and Danny can elaborate, but they're using it how they would use it in the freshwater. I can't say how I've done it because I've never done it, but in the saltwater, I'm using it to map the bottom. So for me, I could have asked people, we fish a lot of limestone bottom. We fish shipwrecks. We fish artificial reefs and, obviously legitimate reefs. And I could have asked, aside from going down with a scuba tank and goggles, there's no way to visually see what the bottom looks like. So for me, when I put the LiveScope on the boat, it wasn't to see what the fish were, because in the Gulf of Mexico, if you're on a chunk of structure, the fish are typically there. Whether they're feeding or not, I don't know, but the fish are always there. And the LiveScope screen is full of fish, right from the groupers on the bottom to snappers here and suspended fish, all the way up to, the barracudas on the surface that Danny was talking about earlier. So for me, it wasn't about seeing fish. It was about how that shipwreck is positioned on bottom. What's its orientation? Is it north-south? Is it west-east? How the tide hits it when it's incoming, how it hits it when it's outgoing. So for me, it was more of a mapping tool than it was a finding fish tool. And now when I go to certain spots that I've mapped with the LiveScope, I don't need to drop the LiveScope because I know I have it mapped in my charts, and I know, okay, this is where the ship lays, this is where the reef is. So for me, it was more of a learning tool than it was a hunting tool.
Interesting. That's very cool. I haven't heard it put like that by most anglers, if any. Of course, we use it differently maybe than you are down in south. But if you think about it, there's a lot of similarities between Lake Erie Lake
Yeah.
St. Clair to the Gulf of Mexico. It's basically a bowl of sand, and any blade of grass, tree, or a little bit of structure, boom, there's fish. So that's really cool. That's a great way of explaining it. Danny, you go ahead.
Well, I mean, just to touch on that forward-facing sonar, I have to elaborate what Kevin's saying. It is a learning tool. Like more and more that I use it, I'm starting to use it now to correct mistakes that I'm making. I know how to use it to find fish, but now I'm trying to understand what I'm actually looking at. Like sometimes you may look at it and you've got a westward wind. You've had a westward wind for 3 or 4 days now, so you know that current flow is fishing this way. You expect the fish to be in a certain spot, but you realize, well, they're on the other side. Why are they there? But they're negative. They're not feeding. So you're starting to understand that they have like a feed and a break window. They're coming in the back, they're taking a break, they're moving in the front. So this is all giving you that technology to understand that timing. So when it comes from a tournament aspect, you can get into a piece of structure. And if you can see all those conditions, say these guys aren't feeding yet. Maybe I should come back in an hour and I should go try and work somewhere else. Or working on your cadences, how you're working on actual bait. You've done it the same way all the time. You're naturally designed to work a bait that way, but the fish aren't responding to that. It just takes a little extra flick, little speed movement, change your weights, whatever it may be. So that's kind of my approach. I know Kevin, when we've been on his boat, he showed us his setups. We've talked about it. And quite honestly, we were just hoping to see a shark go by on one. That was our excitement for it all. That's all we wanted to see, and we never got to see that, honestly.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. When it comes to the community of anglers, obviously, Kevin, you have friends, whether it be at work, family friends, acquaintances, old school mates. I've always seemed to find that the friends that I have within the fishing community are a step above. I love everyone, and I love all my friends, and I have some best friends from high school that I still continue to fish with, but I have a greater majority of friends from the fishing community. When you were in the tournament trail, NOWT, NWT, or anywhere else that you participated, do you still keep in touch with a lot of those anglers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I do. My touring partner for years on the U.S. based trails, Derek Parker, he's still my best friend. He still comes down here. We talk twice a week, So among other people, but like you said, that's what we do. We fish. That's where we build our relationships, and that's our unity with other dudes who do the same thing, and that's what we have in common. So some of my best relationships are built through those years fishing those trails.
I couldn't agree more, because here's the thing. I don't have to explain my passion for angling to Danny. I certainly don't have to explain it to you, Kevin. Yeah. But some other friends that don't necessarily understand, like, what is it about this fishing that you're so in tune to? We get to bypass all that, because at the end of the day, we all have this love for fishing. So yeah, no, I'm glad that you feel the same way in regards to that. But what is one of the best experiences, or maybe one of the funniest, maybe something you'd want to share when you were on the tournament trail? What was a good takeaway or a good story that you'd want to share?
Oh, there's so many,
The PG ones.
Well, that's what I'm trying to think here. I'm trying to think PG. Okay, what can we talk about? What can we talk about?
I figured I'd give you an opportunity to give me a chance.
Yeah,
to think
so I don't know. That's a good question. I will tell you, the group of guys, I've never felt so welcome as when I started fishing competitively. And obviously, everyone looks at you your first year, especially as a co-angler, as the NFG, you're the new guy. But, you build those relationships, and you can have laughs, and you can go to the bars. And, I specifically remember North Dakota, Devil's Lake. I remember leaving the bar and going to the boat launch for pre-fish for a few days in a row, and the bar was like home. That local bar was like our home. And Danny knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. But that was the game, because what the best part of what boat was it is that we weren't the only ones. Because come the rules meeting, it's all of a sudden like, you've been with us for like 3 days. You've been there. So it's like everybody, we're all the same, man. We're all chasing the same dream, and we're all fishing the same fish. So that's what I love about that that touring community, is that everybody just meshes. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you do, what your real job is. When you show up and you start pre-fishing, or you go to the rules meeting, or you go to the bar, you're all equal.
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
I noticed what Kevin's talking about, when by day 3, when we were down our last day, it felt like I was in a tournament. We just spent 2 days pre-fishing, and today was tournament day. Just because we woke up, we were hungover, we got our shit together, we knew what we had to do. We got to the boat, we're in the boat, we're off, and there was no missteps, and that's usually what ends up happening. And then you realize, I'm still doing this for fun. I got to drive to Miami tomorrow.
yeah. But you get in a rhythm, right? You get in that rhythm, and it's like, all right, give me a bait. It doesn't matter how hungover you are, or how much you kind of don't want to be there, but it's like, all right, pass me a bait, let's go.
And you love every minute of it. It feels fantastic. At the end, we talk about it for years afterwards. We look forward for that feeling, right?
It's the best. That's why our community is so tight. I only see Danny and Nick once a year, and when we do, we make the absolute best of every day we're together.
So I will say this, and I have to give a tip of the hat to Danny. Having a supportive wife that fishes with you in these tournaments, and Mary Lisa, she holds her own. There's no doubt about it. As Female Angler of the Year for 2024 for the NOWT, she's a great stick. But does your wife fish with you? Does she have the same passion for angling as you do?
My wife loves what I do. She loves me to be happy, come home from work happy. She lived through my business era where I was gone on the road, and I was, I'm stressed. And so she lived through that. So it's better for our family doing this. We're tighter, we're closer. We take the kids to the beach. We call it church, but every Sunday we take the kids to the beach on a boat. A lot of private beaches around here. So we do that every Sunday. So and my wife's heavily involved in the business. She does all the scheduling. She texts the captains. So we're a very family oriented thing. So she may not be out there fishing and loving fishing as much as I do, but she loves the business, and she loves, seeing tourists and anglers come and leave happy. And so it works really well for us.
That's awesome, because I'll be honest, when you do have that kind of support, you make a great team. And I will say, obviously, with the success that you're having and what I've seen from Danny and Mary Lisa, you guys got it dialed in. So good on you for that.
And when we're down there in Florida, it was very obvious. Like she's very much aware of what angling life is all about, the whole fishing, the whole charter busy. And like, she took very great good care of me and Nick. There's no doubt about that. And, but you can clearly see, like, it's there's no misstep. She understands. She's moving along with it, and she clearly accepts it. And she, like I said, she takes we don't take good enough care of her, I think, is our problem now.
We got to get her down here and on like a 300-pound grouper. We got to get her to wrestle one of the. Yeah, we got to get her down here and wrestle one of those.
I can't wait for her to start feeding us. If she can even get on the dock to hand feed a
the tarpon.
The tarpon, that would be a dream for me. I mean, I can just picture what she's going to be saying before we even get to the dock, and it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. We'll do it. We'll do it.
100%. Joe, a great question here. Does your wife like to fish, Scottie? No. Honestly, and that's why I'm enamored. At the end of the day, when I see folks like you, Kevin, when I see folks like Danny, even meeting Nick's wife, there's because you got to be a special kind of woman. You really do. And of course, my wife supports the shit out of me when it comes to what I do. But at the end of the day, when I see how you guys have fun, not conduct yourself, I won't say that, but how you have fun. I'm thinking, if there's a woman back home, grinding her axe, thinking, when is the roof going to get fixed? When is the grass going to get cut?
Right.
I often think about that. And, but when I see a great team, it truly is inspiring. So yeah, no, great question, Joe. I appreciate that. I do have to ask, Kevin, obviously with you down there, and of course you have your own struggles when it comes to the charter company, and of course your clientele, and just making sure that you have, continued clients and continue to have fish, which I don't think is ever going to be necessarily a problem in the Florida area. I don't see it on the horizon that there's going to be the fish are going to take vacation on you by any chance. Going forward in the industry, is there any things that you would like to see changed, and maybe things that need to be changed in order to get more people into fishing, or at least make the industry and the community itself stronger?
That's a great question. I think for the area that I'm in now, it's all about getting the kids and the youth out there. So 6-shooter charters, we do we haven't done yet. I stand corrected, but we are doing a summer camp for children next summer. And for me, it's not about money or the availability of people who live in my area, because we live on the water, and the ocean's 2 miles that way, and anybody could fish. It's other than a fishing license, is basically cheap fishing. It's about getting the kids out there and showing them what it's all about. So the only thing that I don't know that anything needs to be changed or modified, but I do think we need to focus on the children and the youth of our communities, whether it's down here in Southwest Florida or up by Danny. That's the next generation. Those are the kids who are going to be buying boats one day. Those are the kids who are going to be fishing the NOWT one day, and all the tournament trails. So I think as guys like us, and with our passion, if we can put a little bit of that passion into a couple kids every year, that's going to spark the next generation, and that's what's going to keep fishing going.
Danny, I'll pose the same question to you, because I don't think I've asked that to you. Is there anything that you see, other than the obvious thing, getting the youth involved? Anything that you would see is kind of imperative going forward, that something needs to change, or we need to tweak a little in order to continue this growth in the industry and the fishing community?
Well, that feels like a loaded question in a way, because it's kind of a tough one to answer in our neck of the woods. But it always boils down to anything. It's first off, it's got to be fun. If you're having a good time, the cost has got to be associated with it. So, we're already hooked. So for us, I've been doing this since I was 2 years old. I love fishing, and I would remember fishing off a dock, doing whatever it was. And every opportunity I had to get into a boat with somebody to go fishing, whether it was my grandfather or my uncles or my cousins and stuff like that, I was gone. So you first of all, if you don't have that passion, how do you introduce that to somebody like that? But it's got to be fun. It's got to be simple. It can't be overwhelming. It's no different than trying to introduce a child to hockey. You can be like, you're going to be the next Wayne Gretzky, but I don't even want to get on the ice. Well, that's you've got a hurdle in front of you. So I think when you have those situations where we live, we're getting a lot more restrictive, I feel, in accessing just people being able to walk off a dock to go fishing. So you got to maintain that that's still there, because yeah, I can go to Canadian Tire, I can go to all these places, I can buy a fishing rod, I can go buy a bait at the corner store, but where can I go use it without having to look at Google Maps to try to figure something else? If you have a government dock, like that's how I grew up. The government dock was down the road. We went off the government dock. We caught catfish, rock bass, smallmouth, perch, whatever we got. Sometimes we got lucky. We got some nice fish. But that's what drove our passion and stuff like that. And then it expanded from there to hopping on our bikes. And like I said, back then, I don't want to age myself, but we didn't have Google Maps. And we had to pedal around, and we'd find these creeks, and we'd walk down the creeks and start doing like that. So I think it's more just providing access. And you see that with what you guys are doing with CFN, with Camp Macintosh and all these kind of facilities and stuff like that. They bring in the youths fishing with what they do in the Sioux with the fish algoma and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's a big aspect, is bringing that in, but making it simple, making it fun, that draws that attention. You get to where me and Kevin and even yourself, where that passion gets in there, where we start jumping into the technology and the techniques and spending the money. Like going to Florida is not necessarily the cheapest thing in the world, but it's money that I will spend any day to go spend a day in the water with Kevin and experience what I got to experience and go check all that kind of stuff out. But it starts with fishing off the government dock, really.
You're right. That's exactly where it starts.
And here's the thing, guys, because I hear it all the time. Kevin, the way you answered it is exactly how I hear it from most people in the industry. We got to get the youth involved. When we started, you talk about the docks. You had a rod, you had a jig, a worm, bobber, whatever. However you started, it was basic, it was simple, and we loved it. Now you have boats, you've got electronics, you've got finesse presentations, so many different types of baits. I'm actually kind of surprised, especially now with some of the apps and the ability to use your devices to, better your fishing experience. How is it that we're having this trouble getting kids involved in fishing? It should be easier now than it was when we were young.
It's intimidating. You have too much information now. It's like an information overload. Back then, we were kind of naive. You just kind of run out and throw a jig in the water and see what happens. My network of information was Outdoor Canada and Ontario Out of Doors. Those reading those magazines. That's all I had. I didn't have Google in my hand. So now when you go onto it, I can Google how to start fishing, and I'll get a million hits. It becomes overwhelming because it's just somebody's opinion, and you can get lost in that translation, which could probably turn you off. And it's no different from fishing to any other aspects we do in life. We can get overwhelmed with information, right? So driving's no different. When I was a kid, you learned how to drive sitting on your dad's lap at like 6 years old, steering the steering wheel. Do you hear those stories anymore? We hear them up north. We're doing them in our side by sides now, but it's not a very common practice. I remember, it's got to be fun. It's got to be simple, I think.
Kevin, you feel the same way?
I do feel the same way. I think there's a lot of information available through the web now that I didn't, like, much like Danny, I didn't have when I was doing it and in the tournament circuit. But at the end of the day, I think us as our generation of anglers, there's not a lot of guys willing to share information because it's their secret spots, it's their secret lake, they've been going there for 20 years, and it's that we got to share this stuff, man. Like these young kids coming up to fish, they're not going to go out and they're going to go out and they're going to have a horrible day one, and they're never going to do it again. So we got to set the future generation up for success rather than beating them down for trying something new. And that's my thing. Is like when I moved to Florida, guys, a lot of guys would not share information with me. The old timers are like, no, we figured it out on our own. You got to figure it out on your own. And that's fine. I respect that. I respect that in an angler. But when I translate what I know now into, a young kid, it's like, brother, you got a boat. I'll give you a number where you can go and catch 50 snapper tomorrow with your 12-year-old buddy that's only 2 miles off the coast. I want these generations to go out, and then I want them to come back and then high five me and say, hey, we killed it. So that's what we need, right?
Yeah. I find the industry, back in the 90s when I first started, it was a bit of an old boys club. And, I talked to Big Jim about it too. It's not to say that it wasn't welcoming, but it's nowhere near as welcoming as it is now. Of course, the opportunities are so vast when it comes to young anglers, what they have at their disposal, how they can become famous and further themselves, whether it be through social media or various other platforms. I think there's so much available. And when I constantly hear that we got to get kids into fishing, I'm thinking, if I had what these kids have now back when I was a kid, I don't think I would have done anything else. I really don't. Yeah. So I scratch my head sometimes why it's so difficult to get kids into fishing.
If I can touch on that a little bit, Scottie, it's actually I think it's kind of having an opposite effect, because you have that availability. It's like, well, I don't really understand it. I don't really know much. So did I buy the right rod? Did I buy the right line, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to post a rock bass on Facebook and have everybody ridicule me. So I find that aspect has kind of jumped in as well, that everybody feels that they have to have that $80,000 boat and the $500 reel and all that kind of stuff, which we really don't. We're our own worst enemies by creating that, but at the same point, we got to embrace. Like, I'm with Kevin. I mean, when I know there's some young guys around here, some yes, and young girls too, that they'll reach out and they'll say, like, oh, I've done this, I've done that. You're like, oh, good for you, that's awesome. We got to be encouraging when we do see that. Just because I've for the amount of 30-inch walleyes I caught, I shouldn't expect anybody else to catch that. You should be proud of if your biggest walleye is 20 inches. That's impressive. That is really impressive because I was that person at one point in my life. That was the biggest walleye of my life, and that's what drove me to keep pushing to go to bigger fish. So you can't be discouraging, and you do see that on social media, or you do see on social media that it's kind of a double-edged sword where people are over exaggerating what their accomplishments actually are. So of course people are gonna jump on that to say no, you're wrong, and
100%. No,
we're our own worst enemies in that. I think
You're right. It's very judgmental. The social media world can be very judgmental, especially. I mean, I'm sure it is in any industry, but especially in the fishing industry.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, and I know I've talked to this about other folks in other industries that say, oh, you think you're unique in the fishing industry? No, we have the same trials and tribulations where we are. So don't think you're unique. It's everywhere. And of course, social media has definitely given a platform for some people that shouldn't have one. And that's unfortunate. So yes, we're bombarded with that. Society isn't doing us any favors with all the crap that we have to deal with on outside the confines of your own house. But needless to say, we got to get back to the fun of fishing. That's the main thing.
The only advantage to fishing is we can get away with it in a beer body.
Yes. Yeah,
right,
you can skip arm day. Yeah, you can skip arm day.
Yeah. Not in the golf. You can't skip
No.
Danny, any last words before we wrap things up?
No, good. I'm actually very happy to have Kevin on here because I have a great time with him. Like it's anytime Kevin Koprash name comes up in a conversation, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. And like it's always a good time. So it's one of those situations where I look forward to it. If Kevin called me tomorrow and say, hey Danny, I got a trip lined up, we can go do this, I'd probably jump at it. Which, that could be a whole new episode because I know he does get to sneak up into, I think you go into Louisiana when you get into the redfish and you go into the alligators and stuff like that. And I would love to get involved with that. And then we've already talked about tarpon. There's too much to really get into that I just can't afford to do.
Nah, come on. Well, there's always money. You can make more, Danny. You can make more.
I've driven across country before. Across the US. I'll do it again.
Oh yeah.
Kevin, I really want to thank you for your time tonight. But more so than that, for those who want to get out fishing, don't want to be intimidated, and enjoy what Florida has to offer when it comes to fishing, how do they get in touch with obviously your wife who's booking the charters, so that they can get on some of the fish that our good friend Danny and Nick have caught?
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Again, appreciate you guys for having me. But sixshootercharters.com. It's spelled CHUTER. Or you can call us directly at 239-389-1575. You'll either get myself, my wife Stephanie, or my mother Susie. We're a very family-oriented company. But like I said, I love taking local boys back home, girls, boys, Canadians. Love it. So we welcome everybody.
Right on. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks,
we
man.
bid you farewell, and stay safe, my friend, out on those waters in the Gulf Coast.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
right on. As always, Dan, we wrap things up with yet another fantastic show and a great guest. Next week, I'm hoping to have Mark Penner on, who's going to be talking a little bit about some of the stuff that goes down in the St. Catharines area and the tournaments that are run through and sponsored by Grimsby Tackle. So look forward to that. In the meantime, dude, I wish you well. I hope the snow doesn't start flying up there for you anytime soon.
I don't think we're that close, but
and Larry doesn't drink you out of house and home.
Larry's how are we doing over there?
I'm good.
He's doing good. He enjoyed the show.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah. So you can see Larry's having a good time over here. So
Right on, Larry. Well, Danny, as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.
Absolutely, buddy.
Hopefully Mark will be joining us. In the meantime, dude, all the best. Right on.